Island. The morning started out peaceful. We were rambling along on the lazy river. Early morning pace. The stench of rotting jungle, the dark waters. You don't want to put your hand or foot into it, and you certainly wouldn't drink from it. There were strange things lurking underneath that could eat you and swallow you whole. In fact, just up ahead are the festering pools of crocs. Namanwari is the term used for the largest mythical crocs. The natives call them wari. Tourists come here to take pictures and watch the eating frenzies of these big beasts. Hako was heading downriver to the next village to pick up supplies. Hako started to examine the rest of the crew in the skiff. They were the usual crowd, ladies looking for romance, mysterious men in plain clothes trying to look unimportant, distrusting guys with possible criminal records, the young seekers of action, and rich folks that have business to conduct. Photographers hoping for that one perfect photo shot to win an award. Rifled men able to stand up to pirates, thieves, and killer animals that might want to hurt us. But who was Hako to judge? Hako didn't belong either, just passing through like everyone else, doing the best to make a living, staying out of trouble, minding his own business, and giving the helpless a hand whenever he could. Along with the smells of decay are the other subtleties, the fragrances of powerful flowers, sons of animals that can both amuse and scare you, birds giving off music and fanatic warnings that one sometimes cannot understand, but loves to listen to, mosquitoes that can kill you, and other insects that suck the life out of you. In fact, this jungle environment is downright lethal, but addictive. You kind of enjoy the danger, makes you feel the value of being alive. And when that warm sun hits you early in the morning, it makes life so worth living that it evaporates the negativity all away. The morning heat is just cool enough to enjoy. There is little sweat and few bugs to worry about. Just the best time of the day. The dullness of waking up has passed. The terror of night has disappeared and the rest of the day is ready to reveal itself. It's a good time to relax and drift, sort of slide away into daydreams, that safe point between awake and asleep, just listening to the lather of water passing the skiff, occasionally a splash of a fish snapping above the surface, grabbing a bug, and then more silence. That's just it. The silence on the river is not your normal activity, no monkey sounds, no birds singing. What does this all mean? Hako must be falling asleep, keeping a musical rhythm with the movement and sound of the skiff motor. With a jolt, Hako came to the awareness of some kind of an explosion. Maybe not an explosion, but a something not right feeling. Slowly the skiff seemed to be moving in an arc, first upwards then away from the brow, almost like the skiff was in two pieces. Hako could see the front end of the skiff come poking out of the water. It really was in half, looking like parts of the Titanic. Hako hit the water, which not only brought him from dreamland into cold and wet reality, but the thought occurred to him exactly where he was. Jungle-infested waters. The river current dragged him down and Hako reacted by churning the black water all around him. He was lost in the bubbles, not knowing which way was up. Hako relaxed, knowing there may be a chance of survival if he found air. Nothing mattered now but the need for air. He felt murky cold sludge, for a moment thinking he hit bottom sand with his head. This caused him to sputter as if to yell. Reversing and pushing up, he found the distance to the surface approximately 15 feet later. Hako thought he would drown before he got air. He never thought how important a gulp of air would feel like till breaking through the surface. Hako was in danger, and here he was musing about his lung capacity. He was not alone. He could feel the presence of others quite near him. Hako burst again above the river's current, dragging him along, and he saw the tiny island slightly to his left in front of him, and, a bit downriver, it must have been the photographer. His agony of death never left his memory. Wari have a habit of flaunting their victims alive to the others. Hako didn't see him, just heard him. Victims may have been kept alive for a little while till the play stops and Wari decides how to soften up the meal. Drowning is one way. Then Wari likes to tenderize the meat by either stuffing it in underground crevices, or they reach the bank and find a spot to smash the meat to pulpy morsels. These thoughts raced through Hako's mind with paralyzing fear. The hopeless sounds of people dying were within feet of him, some upriver and some downriver. The Wari were very near. The river seemed in a frenzy with the smell of kills. The Wari roarings sound like the cross between lions roaring and hissing snakes. The deeper the tones, the larger they were. These are seasoned hunters of the rivers. The gurgled human sounds stopped just as quickly. Abruptly, and Hako slammed into the grass island. The island was not what he thought it would be. He had moved the island when he landed on it. It was about 30 feet in diameter. It was nothing more than a collection of 12 grass clumps rooted to the bottom. There was nothing to really climb up on. Hako just sank chest deep through it. He had to hide. He had to get away from the river. The Waris were coming. Hako froze when he felt the island quiver. A Wari was pushing through the grass somewhere from the other side, heading toward him. Hako knew Wari was searching for him. Again Hako called upon the powers of heaven. Less than a minute ago Hako had been hoping for air. Now he hoped for protection. Hako concentrated on the small faint whisperings within, looking for answers on how to survive. Sinking under the water, Hako exhaled, sinking even farther into the root system of the island. He could feel the Wari pushing and tearing at the roots, crashing as Wari moved inland. With no air in him, he found he could move with some effort. Hako half wiggled, squirmed and dragged himself to the left. Being tangled in the tall grass, Hako attempted to rise up a bit for air. His lungs began to hurt as he made a final push with his feet to stand. Hako lifted part of the grass clumps with him, took in a large fill of air and sank down as if in a large lounge chair. He pictured himself totally limp and felt free of all thought. Hako even passively imagined the Wari frenzy from 20 feet in the air, relaxed in his imaginary balloon of reality. He was just deliriously watching the progress from above. This Wari was a big one. Wari was digging through the island, looking for him. Hako was 5 or 6 feet from the edge of the island upwind. The scary thought was Wari could sense him, probably knowing exactly where he was. Hako bolted into an upright position, and with all his strength, he sloshed through, heading downwind along the outer edge of the island. Taking a deep breath of air, Hako dove off the grass island, letting the river pull him. With slow, linked movements he descended sideways underwater along the island. The current took him away. He was now very near and slightly downriver of Wari. Wari didn't stop, but kept on pushing, tearing, being greedy, looking for Hako's flesh. This definitely had not turned into a picnic. Hako did not have much time to realize what happened next. Grabbing hold of the island roots, he needed air. While coming up, he was half torn and pushed down. Something ripped at his hair. Was he being eaten by a Wari? Hako lost his hold of the island. He pushed up for air and found himself on a shallow sandbar a few feet from the island. Tired, he forgot about concern for his own life, and just watched. It surely was another Wari on the island. Evidently, a newcomer had sensed the urgency of the first stalker and made haste, climbing right over Hako. He sure tore him up. Now the two Wari were busy fighting over who would get to Hako first. Also, blood was coming from the back of Hako's head, where the worry and frenzy used Hako's head as a stepping stone to get over the island's loose bank. Hako was intending to slip into unconsciousness on the sandbar, when the thought tugged at him to get away. Looking around, the situation was obvious. Worries were everywhere. If Hako bolted for the shore, the worry would detect him. In fact, he thought they already did, but their movement was still amongst themselves on the island. Amazing how they worked. If one worry gave the impression of large worthy prey, the rest assumed there was some for them also. Then the idea came to him. Hako could be rescued only if he stayed and hid himself on the island. He couldn't make it to shore. He glided toward the island. It was his only chance before he got spotted. He had to move quickly. Hako sank deep into the island grass roots, placing his back to the commotion, which was very close. The worry were getting bogged down and getting caught up with the roots, and fighting among themselves. Pulling at one of the grass stalks next to Hako, the bottom of the stalk was round, thick, and the inside was soft. The upper part of the stalk was strong enough. With firm pressure, Hako managed to clear a hole through a piece of stalk. While blowing the tube clear of debris, he inserted himself as if into a sleeping bag. His legs went deep into the roots of the island. His head, along with the breathing tube, fit snugly between two large clumps of grass. With a hard exhale, Hako took his first slow inhale and spit out a bad-tasting pulp. This was easy enough. He could breathe and stay hidden for a while. The whole island seemed to be moving. Hako couldn't see much, and he was exhausted. If he passed out now, he would certainly drown. His body may never be found. Hako tugged at a wet root which was stuck to his face. He pulled at it. It was a leech. He must be covered with them. He would have screamed and jumped out of his skin, except he had very little strength to react. This was sort of a bad dream. Hako must stay awake to keep the tube in his mouth. But then again, it was a dream and it just didn't really matter anymore. It was commotion and dark. Hako was extremely cold, and the reality came to him. He was underwater wrapped up in roots on a grassy island. He was in the middle of a river, infested with worries. His head hurt. It kept him from sleeping. He wanted to sleep. Kept thinking about the stale air. A tube in his mouth. Tasted like rotten juice. Hako didn't want to move. It was a safe space. A silent protective womb. With reptiles all around him, leeches feeding on him, and heaven knows what else. That sound. Where had Hako heard that sound before? It grew louder. It sounded like a motor of some kind. It was a boat motor. Someone was out there. How could Hako move in a dream? He tried to move. Force more air in. Is this a dream? He had a tube in his mouth. He was underwater on an island and the sound was a motorboat. If a worry spotted him, he would have little chance. Hako pulled his legs in to stand up. The boat might have rifles and could protect me. He could get saved. What if the boat doesn't see him in time? Hako lifted himself up and felt the sun streaking through the grass. He was blinded for a moment and dared not move. Squinting, he couldn't see the boat, yet knew it was close. It was upstream and it would pass him soon. The riverbanks had the worry attentively looking on. Suddenly all of them scrambled, slithering into the river. He was a dead man. Could the worry see him in the tall grass? Maybe they sensed blood. Maybe the boat attracted their curiosity. How would Hako let the boat people know about him? Taking a deep breath, Hako screamed. He had no voice and the sound he attempted was muffled by the motor and rustling of the tall grass. Maybe Hako couldn't be seen either. If he completely stood up, he would attract the worry and they would get to him quick. Hako seized the boat. He can see people. He didn't know how to make them notice him. Didn't have a way to signal. Maybe his shirt that was shredded, not much left of his clothes. In fact, Hako was covered with mud and grass, leeches and river debris. He stood up out of the water and took the chance, waving his hands. He wondered why the people didn't notice him. Looking around, it gave Hako a better indication of what the problem was. The grass on the island was taller than he was. With this camouflage, the boat people could be looking right at him and not see Hako. Bet the worry will find him, he thought. They have different ways of detecting prey. Hako looked around for something to throw. If he had dry matches, maybe he could light up the whole island. They were shooting in the air. They were looking for survivors. Soon the boat rounded a bend downriver and was gone. They would have to come back, and this time Hako was determined to get rescued. Hako felt the slight quiver of the island, and knew that scared feeling again. He intended to step back away from the bank and tripped. A big Gaiwari had for the moment missed chopping on him and was grounded on a clump, squirming and leaning forward trying to grab hold of Hako. Hako dug his heels and scrambled backwards over the grass clumps, making some distance between Wari and him. Hako stopped only because he could feel the island was silent. The Wari was gone. Hako's heartbeat was the loudest sound. Hako moved toward the center of the island. Why did Big Gaiwari back off? Not sure why. The Wari left little pieces of themselves all over the island. No wonder the jungle was silent. The island has been an arena for quite some time. Actually, Hako didn't know how long it's been. From Hako's left side, another Wari was crashing toward him. Closing his eyes, he could sense Wari was coming. Then, the Big Gaiwari attacked from behind. Big Gaiwari made the whole island sink a bit. This time Hako had to move. From his left side, another Wari came charging. It felt like Wari could smell the urgency for the kill. Wari have a smell of something that's dead. Again and again Wari charged the island from various points. Then another smaller one began to push and burrow toward Hako from the left again. These Wari were trying to see who could get to him first. Hako just sat down tired, not knowing what will happen next. Two Wari decided to work him toward the downstream left side of the island. Hako wondered why the left side. His own weight has tilted the island slightly toward the left side of the river. Hako supposed they could corner him better. Hako kept his eyes closed and felt them working, moving on him. The younger one went into a frenzy and struggled to get at Hako. As the thrashing became more intense, Hako slowly slipped around the Wari and moved upstream on the island. He's learning. Hako could feel their movements and moved a bit faster. How long can Hako keep this up? Another Wari came on the scene and attacked the younger. Then the older Big Gaiwari behind him just left. Hako sat down in the muddy grass, waiting for this cat and mouse fight to end. Maybe Hako passed out. He was mostly underwater, except his head was leaning on a clump of grass. The island around him looked a mess. Where tall grass used to be, was now littered with damage. Sharp stalks were poking out all around him. The Wari could easily see him now. Well, Hako had enough, and standing up, he pulled a rather long sturdy stalk. Hako was toying with it. What was he thinking? Chasing the Wari with a reed? Exhausted, bleeding, Hako's feet sank into the roots of the island. He sensed the faint quiver of a Wari attempting to sneak up on him directly in front of him. Hako extended his arm backwards as if to spear a fish. The Wari broke through the grass, blundering forward, hoping to surprise Hako. It was the big guy again. As if Hako had been practicing for 1,000 years, he punched the stalk through Big Gaiwari's left eye. Hako had made the move so fast and hard that he lost his footing and fell back, sinking further into the mud. Big Gaiwari respectfully backed away, with a piece of stalk still sticking out of the eye. Hako started pulling out slivers of the stalk that were impaled through his hand. What was Hako dreaming? The same familiar sound as in another dream. It was a hum of a motorboat. Hako stood up, not thinking about the worry. Armed with another grass reed of great supply, Hako moved toward the sound of the boat. Of course, he was delirious and half-conscious. Hako wanted to be seen by the rescuers. A few feet from the island edge, Hako took the grass reed and started beating it against the rest of the grass island. Didn't help in the clearing process, as Hako had intended, yet, as with all dreams, he just kept smashing his grass reed around. He did this to desperately clear the grass. Hako wanted to be seen by the boat. At the same time, the big Iwari approached, reed still in his left eye. Without giving it much thought, Hako whacked him on the nose. The response was an immediate, respectful withdrawal into the river. Faster and faster Hako churned and crashed the grass stalk. He could hear the boat and the whirling sound of his reed, or should Hako call it a spear, or was it a whip, or was it just a grass reed? Sounds like buzzing bees. Hako just kept thrashing, creating a sphere of sound around him. The whistling sound, like a feather. His sword sound, his protection against all the elements. Darkness seemed to be closing around Hako. He was becoming mesmerized by the whirling sound of the grass stalk, like when he was a happy child, remembering the sound of baseball cards attached with clothespins, the rumbling sounds it made against the spokes of a child's bicycle. Happy being outside, playing. Hako was drifting. Or, was that really the sound of a motorboat? There was very little to tell after being rescued. Rumors circulated about the Wari fighter. The tales stretched taller and longer. About Hako, the Wari fighter who single-handedly chased Wari with the strange sound made from a grass reed. The natives created dances, using different lengths of stalks and whips. They created buzzing sounds by waving them ceremoniously through the air. They were dancing a story about Hako, the warrior, who killed the Wari through the eye. Years later, the American legend was revisited by a persistent reporter, who tracked down Hako and asked about the grass reed legend. Hako replied saying, "The grass reed, on that island, represents the Constitution and Bill of Rights of the United States of America." The end.